As part of the Monitor Farm Legacy project, join Robbie Newlands at Cluny Farm in Morayshire and Karen Stewart, a nutritionist with SAC Consulting, to recap one of the main topics covered in Robbie's time as a monitor farmer from 2010 to 2013. Finishing cattle were always a hot topic at his meetings and continue to be discussed among the community group today.
So what changes have you made since before the monitor farm and after the monitor farm on the beef finishing side of things?
We've had one or two changes. We've changed breed of cow a wee bit. We used to be all, or quite a proportion of cows, Belgian blue cows out of the dairy. And since the monitor programme finished, we've kind of gone to buying beef cross, mostly Simmental type cows, or bull and heifers we're buying in. We're buying them off a friend's farm down in Ayrshire, beside Gavin. But we have, in the last couple of years, bought one or two sailor cows and seem to be getting, or sailor heifers, and seem to be getting on reasonably well with them, so it's maybe a route we'll go a wee bit further.
What was the decision in going down the Soler route? Was it easier calving, or what was the...
Most of the guys that I'm hearing with Soler cows say they're really easy to calve. Temperament is raised as a wee bit of an issue, but to be fair, the sailors that we've had have been equally as quiet as the Simmentals we've had. I would say marginally quieter. And we're looking for easier calving. That's definitely one of the aims, because we carve everything outside. We still carve everything outside as we were doing at the monitor time. But it's easier calving and getting a cow that will last a while and outwinter well as well, because the cows are all outwinter. And the sailor seems to be reasonably hardy for that as well.
And was the decision to go away from the dairy cross cow due to lack of cows coming in with that, more moved to the Holstein, or
there was, well, it used to be that in this area you could take your choice of Belgian blue calves, because there was a number of dairies, but I think there is only 3 in the whole of the Highland region now. Yeah. There's very few, and the guys, most of them are using Holstein to get heifers. Yeah. There's a few Belgian blue calves, but to get a consistent go, they were edging to more Holstein type as well. They were getting a wee bit harder. So
I think when you're calving, we're outwintering outside as well with the cows, you want them to be a wee bit hardier as well.
The Belgian blues actually survive quite well outside, although we have shelter here because we've got trees and things, but we are grazing them outside on neeps, running them back on stubbles. The Belgian blues survive pretty well, considering the thinner skinned breed than the Simmentals were, or certainly the sailors are. But they were nice cows to handle.
Yeah, nice and quiet.
Very quiet, because most of them are pale reared, they're used to people. They were easy to handle. Whether it's the type of cow, or whether it's because we're focusing slightly more on easy calving EBVs when we're buying bulls, but we're definitely getting less issues with calving. Numbers of calves is less than it used to be. And other than that, we've changed the feeding system for the bulls and the heifers. We've gone to maximum treated barley over the last 2 years. Yep. But it's worked reasonably well. I think on our system it's maybe slightly more difficult from a grain handling point of view. You need a wee bit more room, because you can't put it as deep as popcorn grain, and you have to pay attention to it quite a lot to
storage
make sure
management is
you need to be on it, more so than the popcorn grain was pretty bomb-proof.
Yeah. And your decisions to go on to the maximum, was it simply to reduce protein costs, or was it for the, it's an alkaline?
That was the attraction.
As well, to help with health.
The attraction for us was to try and cut out buying soya, which it did. But we've a wee bit extra handling because we're treating the popcorn grain. We could treat the whole lot and be confident it would keep well right through to probably almost to the next harvest before the last of the cattle's away. Where the maximum grain, they were happy to do for 6 months a treatment on bruised grain for 6 months, but they were, when we were speaking to, it was Harbour that we were dealing with for it, they would have preferred us to keep whole grain treated for longer than that because it's not so dense in the heat, just to make sure it kept
heating and things.
Well, just to make sure it kept well, so that it's just extra handling. Between the extra handling and the maximum treatment is dearer than popcorn, or certainly was. Popcorn is scarcer this year, might be as dear, I don't know, but certainly it was dearer to do the maximum, but then it cut out the 10% or whatever we were putting in as soya into the mix, when soya is quite expensive at the moment.
And did you notice any differences in the finishing time or quality of the bulls changing the diets? Or
the experience last year, the first year we used maximum, our barley that season was bushel weight was lighter, and we got kind of halfway through the winter and it almost went away a bit stale on it. So we added in molasses into the mix, and it got them going again. It was fine. But I think the cattle, they would prefer the popcorn grain, although if they're used to the maximum they get on fine. And this year we've put in the molasses again. We put in a wee bit of wheat just to make it a denser ration, and the cattle have done quite well. The one thing I would notice with maximum as opposed to popcorn grain was the cattle's dung is like you would expect probably from a more traditional ration, more normal dung, whereas on popcorn grain, when you come into the shed, quite often it smelled a bit like a piggery.
It's also the rumen health.
Rumen health, I think, is better on the maximum.
And I see you've got straw out as well, which is fantastic as well, lovely clean straw for them to chew on.
We've always just keep the feeder full of straw, and the hoppers are always full as well. There's no break in that, because that really does upset them.
You talked about the cattle going stale. I think it's really important to keep the ration as interesting as possible, and you commented about adding molasses in as well, and just to keep the moisture and the interest, and you found that helped quite a lot. As I said, the midwinter last year, I don't know if it was because our barley was lighter, it wasn't the bushel weight wasn't so heavy, it was that or what it was, but they definitely went off the straight barley and mineral mix a wee bit. They dipped in their intake, so we added in the molasses, and it definitely lifted it again. I think intake is the key, isn't it? And if the diet gets a bit boring and
a wee bit of variety
does help.
I suppose it's the same as ourselves. It does work, seem to work better with a bit of variety to it. But certainly this year there's been no dip this year because we've been molasses right to the start and a wee bit of wheat in right to weaning all the way through, and bulls have performed quite well.
And are you getting them away quite sharp? 12 months?
We're ahead, well ahead of last year, but I would say we're ahead of what we were doing with the popcorn barley before, although we would have fairly basic diet with the popcorn barley that we're on previously, it was around popcorn barley with soya.
Yes.
And some would say it maybe could do a wee bit of molasses or something just to make it.
It's quite a hefty proportion of barley compared to soya,
Yeah.
as in straight barley. You've not got that sort of buffering capacity of,
Yeah.
of the urea treatment.
No.
It might frighten some people to hear that you put straight barley into into creek feeders, but you know, you do that early on, and you know, the calves are used to it, and they're never left to go empty. And
we put them out. The feeders go out usually about Highland show time.
Okay.
End of June, start of July.
Yeah.
With the calves being born in March. At that stage, they're still, I mean, they're getting all their intake, probably, or most of their intake from their mother.
Yeah, yeah.
And they go and nibble about at the feeder, but they're really not that interested. It's usually a month or 6 weeks later before we're really having to fill the feeders on a regular basis.
Yes.
So the first while, they work themselves onto it. There's no real risk of them going in and taking a bellyful because they're not that interested. And they're well enough fed elsewhere that the barley's an extra.
I think that's the key as well, is making sure they're well enough fed elsewhere as well, that it's not their only source of, especially in the back end when grass disappears. And for the heifers, are they treated differently to the bulls? So when we go back to weaning time, so when the calves are on their mums, are you creek feeding and heifers and bulls, or has anything changed?
We're still doing what we did a trial when we were monitor farm, putting protein into the barley. We were feeding a straight barley, bruised barley on its own into the creek feeders for the calves.
Is that popcorn treated?
Yes.
Yeah.
And during the monitor programme, they got us add in to half the calves, put protein into the mix and feed the calves, so which we did, and found absolutely no difference whatsoever in weight gain or weaning weight or whatever. And some of the guys were saying, well, they'll have laying down more fat than lean growth, so they'll be lighter at slaughter. So we followed the weights all the way through, and there was absolutely no difference. So since that trial, we've been feeding straight barley in the creek feeders as we've always done.
Yeah.
And then by weaning time, we're usually up to 8-10 pounds per head per day out of the creek feeders. So when the bulls and the heifers on that ration are weaned, they come straight into the shed, and the hopper is sitting full of the same ration as they were on before. It's just a barley mix. We offer them, instead of straw in the rings, because they've been outside with their mothers, they've been eating a bit of silage out the feeders. We offer them silage for a wee while once they're weaned until they settle, and then put in the straw and they're on to. But there's no lead in to the hopper being full. The hopper is full from day one, in both heifers and bulls. And we treat the heifers exactly the same way with the same ration as the bulls get. And they're killing about the same age, about 14 months.
But a slightly lighter dead weight then.
Yes.
Do you weigh your calves at weaning time, and what are your sort of daily live weight gains in the bulls and the heifers?
We're weaning the calves in November, and because of the beef efficiency scheme, we were weighing them during the monitor programme, and we're back weighing them again because the beef efficiency scheme, that was a convenient time for us to be weighing them because we're handling them anyway. Where calves are generally, varies a wee bit, but the bulls were generally about 340-ish when we were weaning them in November, and the heifers about 320, 315, 320, that sort of weight. And then we haven't been weighing the bulls on the way through. One of the things we picked up at the Korsky monitor farm was actually putting coos through a weigh crate, and the disturbance of that. took them 10 days to get back to where they were the day you weighed them, just because of the upset involved. So primarily because of that, and also because we're plenty else to do. We hadn't been weighing the bulls through on the way through, but the bulls that we've killed this year so far is that have been on the maximum, and we've got the diet a wee bit more settled. This is our second year on the maximum. Our bulls are on a dead weight basis doing almost a kilo a day on average. Not quite, but almost a kilo a day on average, which is, I'm quite happy with that.
Yes.
The heifers, we've only 6 heifers killed at this point this year. The heifers are obviously a good bit less. They're now coming to such heavy weights for killing, but I haven't actually worked out their gain, but they're coming to 310 kilos ish on a dead weight basis, at a similar sort of age to bulls.
Yeah.
So I'm quite happy with the weight gains.
So the heifers are going to be lighter, but obviously you're getting them away at an early age, and you're not having to keep them another winter and things in your system. That works well for you.
We during the monitor programme, we were encouraged. Well, quite a lot of guys were saying, "Oh, you're wasting the potential in the heifer to go to 380 kilos or whatever she was going to go to on a more extensive feeding system." But to do that, we would have needed more grass to put them to outside, because we wouldn't have fed them so heavily through the winter, so they'd get out lighter, go on to grass, and probably have to come back inside to finish again to get to that weight. So it'd keep them quite a lot longer for that extra 60-70 kilos. Because of our situation here, one, didn't have the grass fields to put them to, and two, we have no shed to take them back into either. So the quicker, more concentrated feeding and get them away quick, fair enough at a lighter weight, suited our situation. Different for everybody. If guys have got sheds and got plenty of grass, then fine.
And you're also using your own barley as well, and you need the fields for the cows going back onto as well, so that's making use of your fields.
The fields are the stubble fields, and the barley or the arable rotation is the winter accommodation for our cows, because the cows are out wintered completely. So we need to grow barley in a way to give the stubbles for the winter accommodation. The barley feeds the cattle. We need the straw for bedding the court. So it's kind of a
all works well.
All works in together, and we're getting close to 170 cows now. To have that running on grass, if we had no stubbles, and then expect that grass to produce grazing the following spring would be quite a challenge, especially in a winter like we've had.
It's your system would suit everybody. Obviously, your cattle are kind of continental crosses, and they're suited to the bull beef and the intensive feeding as well. So, but more native cattle might be more suited to grassland systems. So yeah, everyone's different, isn't it?
The continental cow, our continental cows, we kind of need that growthier cow for the sake of the heifer, and it'd be interesting to see. Maybe as against the bulls, how you'll know better how steers would do in a system like that. Would they presumably wouldn't match what the bulls will do, because the bulls are...
Yeah, bulls are obviously much more efficient at converting feed, and you get your bigger weight gains at a lighter weight, but there's no reason why the same type of steer couldn't be away on an intensive system, maybe close to kind of the 13-14 months of age, but you're obviously getting more efficiency with your bulls, and I suppose it depends on the markets as well, that you have the outlets for them going to too. So yeah. The advantage, I suppose, of steers as well would be that there's no weight limit, time limits rather, for the bulls. The like of bulls killed by the time they're reaching 16 months. Whereas being a steer,
year it wouldn't have had that.
No, I think in your system you'll have no bother getting them away before 16 months, so they'll be...
They're working away fine.
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe more native types and things
Yeah.
that would have that issue. The trials that you've done have been, against yourself as well. So you've done your,
Aye.
what you were doing with the calves, and it's kind of shown, the community as well that things are possible.
The definite preference from the guys coming to the meetings was for us to sell Stewart heifers especially.
Yeah.
The bulls, they were, but they did the figures upsides down and back to front, and at best they broke even against selling Stewart. But I mean, the Stewarts this last year have been quite good.
Yeah.
But the first 6 bulls went away. They averaged 1,700 something pound. It was 1,704 or something in my hand after expenses. Stewarts are good, but they're not that good.
It's but it'd be an interesting exercise, and people would enjoy, actually seeing for them, going through the figures and seeing for themselves what worked for you and maybe how they could apply that to their places.
Our system is, because we're quite limited on facilities, it had to be simple, and that's why we buy in heifers to bull. We didn't, and the numbers of cows we're running, I have one lassie that works with me, and so we because there's just 2 of us, and we've 700 ewes and 170 cows, and we've got a couple of 100 acre barley.
Got to keep it simple.
Or arable between barley and forage and whatever else. If you add complication, it goes away with a lot of time.
Yes. And
that's why we buy in bull and heifers, because we didn't have to think about splitting cows into groups for, that one's are going to this bull because they are got a Charlie bull and that's it. It keeps things simple, and simple makes it easier to work. And for me, at least, it was simple.
Yes, absolutely.
The one thing that I would say that I have noticed, prior to the monitor farm thing, we were making all hay.
Okay.
And they questioned the sanity of that, and they were absolutely right to do so.
Yes.
Because it was nuts. We've gone to silage, and as the cows are weaned in November, they go through weaned in November, they'll be on silage until they calm down, get used to being calves away, and then they go into, in the past it's been Swedes, but for the last 2 years we've had fodder wheat.
Yep.
And it's worked fine. Fodder wheat and straw, and provided there's a decent amount of tops on bulb, the balance between the two is quite a good ration.
That's right, the bulbs are quite high in energy but low in protein.
There's no protein at all in the bulb, so
you need that with your straw as well.
So long as the tops are good, and the cows did really well. This first year we grew it, we had a wee bit of issues with it, but we learned quickly, and last year we had a decent crop of fodder wheat, and the cows did well in it through the winter, and the calf fine, they were looking well going into calving, and they go back onto silage about a fortnight before calving, and then the calving field, and then I think because of the better nutrition coming up to calving, and once they're calved, they're on silage again, but we give them a wee bit of draft through it as well.
Okay.
Because they're getting that slightly better nutrition, we, touch wood, haven't had any bother with skewers for a number of years now by doing that system.
I think the colostrum quality and things
I think the
is maybe a
colostrum,
bit better.
I think the colostrum quality is a lot better. So is there anything you can suggest for us to improve or tweak the system that we're doing? I mean, obviously, it's still looking for improvement, but
Yeah.
is there anything you can think of?
I think it's very hard to improve on what you've got here. I mean, I've come into the bulls' shed, and the bulls are looking really well. They've got great skins on them, they're content, and they've obviously got lovely fresh clean straw, which you know, as we've been standing here, seeing them nibbling away at, and their dung's very healthy. They're, you know, getting good weight gains. I think for your system, it's probably as good as you can do. And with the heifers, you've looked at your finances and the you know, between, you know, finishing them at lighter weights rather than keeping them longer, and it all works well with your system. I think, you know, you're making the most out of the resources you have on the farm. So
the way we've looked at it is with the limitations that we have
Yes.
for sheds and things,
Yes.
and obviously other people might have facilities that we don't have that
Yes.
might suit them better, but
yeah. And for the time that you're allowed, you know, you have for finishing cattle inside, and the continental crosses and things, I think it works really well. Yeah. It's certainly a lovely atmosphere to be in here. It's very, very healthy and very settled. So yeah.
Good.